Let's work on some two-color double knitting techniques. This is a version of double knitting board stockinette in which the two sides are completely different colors. It's wrapped in a very similar manner to normal double board stockinette. This one is two colors, but each is a vertical stripe. And the pink is pink on the black on the back as well as pink on the front. Same deal with the white and the peach colored sections. So I show you how to do this in another video, but I'm showing it to you here just to look at the similarity between the two fabrics. Now, these are two different gauges. Don't let that throw you off. But the formation of the stitches is basically the same. And that's because the wrap is basically the same, but we manipulate the yarns so as to make one always come to the front for the double version that has two colors, one on each side. Here's how we generally wrap double board stockinette that's all going to be one color. Zig and zag across the boards, picking up every other peg going one direction. Now zig and zag back, catching every other peg going the other direction. And that's what the wrap looks like when it's finished, either while casting on or before knitting the row over. I do have whole videos on that if you need more help with the basics. That's just a reminder so I can show you the difference. Here is double board two color. We have two yarns at all times. Twist them so that one color stays on one side and one color stays on the other side. Now we need to wrap these two pegs, but we don't want to alternate colors. So we twist them again and wrap, twist back the other way and wrap. It's important to twist to and fro, otherwise you end up with a knot in the wrapping hand. Twist and wrap. So we are still catching every other peg, but we're always keeping the same color on one side. I am sorry it's so hard for me to do this and never get a hand in the way. It is a slower thing to do than the normal stockinette wrap by far, but it's not nearly as laborious as it looks with me trying to do it on camera. And orange on this side. You can learn to do it so that a pair of fingers sort of twiddles the yarns together. And we don't have to wrap these pegs again because they're already wrapped. And they knit over in the normal way. I learned to do this from a South American knitter. I do not remember her name, so I'm sorry I cannot give her credit. But she was extremely clever and a great knitter. But you can see that the wrap, except for those twists in the middle, looks very, very much like the basic stockinette wrap. And because we are twisting, there is a version that's a little bit different, and I'll wrap part of a row at least and show it to you. We could catch the first peg. Let's try to be more graceful than that. Twist, catch the second peg instead of skipping one, and so on. And it makes an acceptable fabric. It tends to widen out the fabric, and you can see the peekaboo of the other color. So while it is one color per side and it does knit, it's not my preferred method. I prefer the one I just showed you that is more similar to the basic stockinette wrap. The challenge with double board stockinette is to get a nice cast on that looks decent from both sides and is tight enough. You can use the normal stockinette cast on and just latch the edges together as we do with the anchor cord method or the figure 8 method. But a friend of mine, in fact, the very best double knitter that I know, challenged me to try to help her come up with a way of casting on at the bottom that's as close to invisible as we can get. So far, this is my favorite version. A couple of other things that I tried were worth taking note of. This is how it looks if you begin with each side E-wrapped separately with its own color and then begin the 2-color wrap. I actually like this one quite well, as much as the one I'm about to show you. However, the fabric is a little thicker at the bottom. And these two aren't terrible. They began just with the 2-color stockinette wrap. They end up a little looser than I'd like. So in one case, I also wove the color yarn for that side to and fro in front and in back of the pegs before beginning. That weave was then incorporated when knitting stitches over, but as it's basically a straight line of yarn, I was able to draw in the edge with it to tidy it up. That's the bottom sample with the pink. I like that pretty well too. The problem is that you can actually see that weaving if you look at the lower edge of the fabric, and I wasn't crazy about being able to see it. So here comes the one I like best so far. Who knows what else may come in the future. Begin at one end of the work with the 2 yarns joined together. I just knotted mine. Wrap 1 peg twice. Knit bottom loop over the top. Now go to the other side of the work and do the same thing. Once there are 2 loops in place, I'm just letting another peg hold my yarn, bottom over top. This is a version of the ordinary double E-wrap that you may have done. But here's the difference. We now twist the yarns just as we do while knitting the row, so as to be able to repeat it always with the same color on the same side. You can tighten this up quite nicely. It's not tight to begin with, and I actually don't wrap tightly because with pegs like this, it would be hard to get my hook in if I did. Now is when I pull it tight and check that both of them are equally snug, but not so snug we'll have trouble knitting over the first row of real knitting. Now I twist again. So the only difference between this and the actual knitting is that we are not skipping pegs. We're doing the double E-wrap, but we are twisting the yarns in between each time they're used. Wrap. Doesn't really matter which side of the board that you knit over first, as long as you don't get ahead of yourself. You have to do 1 stitch on each side, 2 wraps, bottom loop over top loop, tighten up, twist again, 2 wraps, bottom loop over top loop, tighten up just enough that I can utilize this one, 2 wraps, bottom loop over top loop, tighten up, and proceed. Since Kiss looms can also be set up for double knitting, let's try the same cast on a Kiss. That's the first one. Get them wrapped. Blue on this side. Bottom loop over top loop. Tighten up. twist so the blue is on my side. I'm pointing to myself now. I guess you knew that from where my hands are. Wrap the pink on the other side. Bottom over top. This is a KISS small gauge setup, and it turns out that this is actually the ideal loom for this kind of work because of this feature. See how the pegs are turned? And now there's an opening down the center of each one. That makes it simplicity itself to catch this loop and knit it over, even though the working space is quite slim. Twist. Wrap the pink. But my tool slides right into that opening and gets purchased very easily. Wrap, wrap. You can go in on either side, this side or this side, and access that same space. Of course, if you lift both loops off, you don't get a stitch. Let me try that again. There we go. There is a tendency on some looms, like this one with the straight up peg design, to accidentally lift off more than you meant to. You have fingers. They'll help. Twist, wrap, wrap. Knit over. And the twist is already in place, so I don't have to twist again to catch the blue. So we just keep going across here until we have the number of stitches cast on that we intend to use for the project, and then begin the wrap that I showed you originally. In this case, the cast on began over here, it ended over here, so all future rows will knit, wrap one way, the other way, and knit over. If you had preferred to start casting on at the other end, that would be completely fine. It doesn't really change anything. If you're still watching, I think we can assume you're really fascinated with double knitting techniques. So I'm going to finish up by demonstrating the alternate wrap, the one where every peg is wrapped in order. It's pretty much just the same as what we did, and I am a little bit clumsy here at times, but we're not skipping any pegs. So if you find that you have a gauge that would work better that way, you may want to do it. Another thing I'm demonstrating here is evening up the stitches. There is a tendency when we wrap the two yarns together and then put them on a peg, they may not be perfectly even, but they can be easily adjusted by tugging on the yarns and, if necessary, using the tip of your tool to nudge one wrap to the correct length. We do want the X's to fall right in the middle between the two boards. That's what's going to create the most even stitches and, of course, the most attractive knitting. And there we go. That looks nice.